Retro.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera and Rook Cast, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Their behavior is continually unexpected.
Hello, and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And it's been a really busy week for Star Wars news, week and a half, based on when we recorded last. But we're going to get into all on this Friday's episode of the podcast. But before we do, Jay, remind everybody where we can be found on social media.
Absolutely. We are found on X, Facebook, and Instagram, conveniently at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. I just realized how appropriate that is for this week's news. We'll get into that in a second. Okay. But up first, we have some movie news and add another talent onto the pile of people allegedly making Star Wars movies. The likes of Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, and Variety are all coming out with stories that Simon Kinberg has reached an agreement with Lucasfilm to write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy. Notably not direct. He's the writer and producer on this. And depending on who you ask and which report you read, this may or may not be episodes 10 through 12 of the saga. Some people are saying that it's a brand new trilogy with new characters. And then some are going beyond that saying, yeah, it's a brand new trilogy with brand new characters, but that doesn't mean that established characters couldn't appear in some capacity. Simon Kinberg is not new to the world of Star Wars. He's one of the co-creators of Star Wars Rebels, which he created with Dave Filoni and Carrie Beck. And he's listed as a producer, I think, on almost every episode of Rebels. And he was a consultant on The Force Awakens. Other works that Kinberg has been an integral part of is the X-Men and Logan films of the past 10, 15 years. He produced the first two Deadpool films. He was executive producer on Deadpool and Wolverine. He produced The Martian. He scripted Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He co-wrote the first Sherlock Holmes movie that featured Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. And he produced the most recent Agatha Christie Hercule Poirot set of movies, which includes Murder on the Orient Express and Death and Out, which I really, really liked. So he's also currently attached to produce a new Star Trek movie for Paramount. So he's dipping his toes into both of the big sci-fi franchises there. So, okay, that's the rundown on all of that. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I mean, Simon Kinberg and Rebels, like you said, is just synonymous. And so seeing that name always appearing, in the credits and then seeing it here was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And as you were running down his other works and, some of the things that he's done, the fact that he has scripted Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Okay, I know that's a weird one to pull out of there, but I love that movie. I thought it was so witty. And it was just so fresh and different and just really smart. Like it was smart writing. But obviously he's got amazing experience with Star Wars and, doing all the things with even Marvel and all these other things that, I mean, I think it's fantastic. But it's funny because I always joke that this is the, perfect Star Wars whack-a-mole. We see one writer, producer, or director stick their head up, and then another one sticks their head up, and another one sticks their head up, and we don't know which one we're gonna get to, actually follow. But this is exciting, and I mean, just like with anything else, you follow it, and we do our best to try to stay positive and hope for the best. So I really hope this one pans out, though. But what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, that's just it. It's the, you and I had the conversation earlier this year when we were talking about that period of time after Disney bought Lucasfilm and all the hype that came up with the Force Awakens and everything, we were just sitting on the edge of our seats and waiting to, just gobbling it all up. But to me, it's just kind of like, okay, ho hum, one more thing to keep track of that at best is 50-50 likely to happen. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
And that's what's disappointing to me, is that it's just not worth getting excited about this news anymore. I'm with you. I mean, I liked all those movies I was just talking about. I liked Logan. I thought the first two Deadpool movies were great. I mean, he was an executive producer, so he didn't have as much to do with Deadpool and Wolverine, but I really like The Martian. I also am a big fan of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I've watched it several times. Like the Sherlock Holmes movies, and like it just said, I also like the Hercule Poirot. I read all those books, and why can't I not say his name? But it's a Hercule Poirot. I like that series as well. But it's just kind of like, that's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, and we've got one movie we know is coming out, and we've talked about this so much recently. I don't know that I want to spend all that much time rehashing it, because you can just go back. It seemed like 2 weeks ago and 2 weeks before that we're talking about the state of
Right.
the movie
Yeah.
slate and stuff like this. And it's just it's just getting repetitive. And here's the thing, I get it. It was not a Lucasfilm announcement. They didn't put out a press release that said, we reached an agreement with Simon Kinberg and we're going to do these movies. It leaked. But
Mhm.
how does this keep happening? That's what happened with Sean Levy. That's what happened with not the Lando movie, but so many of these things that have come and gone have been leaks. But it's like, how do you guys not have control over that at this point? Because it makes them look bad when they put
Mhm.
this stuff out there, and it's just like, okay, so you're talking about this trilogy, but what about Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's movie? What about James Mangold's movie, The Dawn of the Jedi? What about Rogue Squadron with Patty Jenkins? She's supposed to be working on a script for that again. The Lando movie that's allegedly being worked on by Donald Glover and his brother. Taika Waititi's movie. I feel like that one's got to be dead at this point. And then Sean Levy's movie. So are you
Yeah.
really working on 10 movies? I mean, some
Right.
people insist that Rian Johnson's trilogy is still in the works. I don't believe it is. But these things come and go, and it's just and I feel like I'm just venting at this point. So thank you everyone for indulging me. But the nature of Hollywood is that someone writes a script or someone's got a story, and then they try and sell it and they try and get the movie made, and it just doesn't always happen. And you come to an agreement to a studio to make something, but then it gets into development hell and it might not ever get work. So to that end, maybe it makes sense to have a whole bunch of different projects in the works, and then see what actually gets developed and what can actually go into production. But maybe just keep more of a lid on it than that. I don't know. But I don't know. I feel like I'm just griping at this point. And I
You
should be
totally
excited
are.
about this news, but it's because I don't dislike the idea. It's just that here it is again, and I don't know that we're ever going to see these movies.
Sure. And I think that everything that you pointed out is rightfully so. And I have a couple thoughts. I mean, one of the things, as you said, with, how does this stuff get leaked? Well, loose lips sink ships kind of thing. And I feel like the whole idea of having all of these different creative people on board with Star Wars is both a blessing and a curse. If you think about the original days of Star Wars, I mean, it was all from George Lucas's brain pan. And then there was a certain core of people that continued to write and produce and create and basically mold Star Wars into the universe that we know that it is today. So now that it's really expanded, like I said, it's both a blessing and a curse. So you have all these amazing people that you could potentially bring on board to do different things. But you're right, it's kind of like the bingo popper
Mm-hmm.
of, you put all of these things in a hopper, and then you pull a number and see which one pops to the surface first. And we are getting to the point as Star Wars fans where we're a little jaded, when we
Yeah.
we hear this kind of music we hear this kind of news. And it's unfortunate because we don't want to feel that way, but I mean, we've kind of been led to believe a lot of things and then had the rug pulled out from underneath us.
Yeah, and they just kind of fade out there, and then someone asks Kathleen Kennedy or someone else at Lucasfilm, like, "Whatever happened?" Like, "Oh, it's still allowed. We would
Sure.
like to do it, but with Taika Waititi's like, we're trying to come up with a third act."
Mhm.
Okay, do you think you're ever going to get him nailed down to finish that? I don't know. And,
No.
to the point though, it's like they get all this diverse talent to write stuff, but then I think back to Rogue One when Gareth Edwards basically gave them about 60% of a movie that they
Mhm.
wanted, and they had to have Tony Gilroy to come in and do the other 40% of it because it wasn't just living up to what they wanted from a Star Wars movie. Solo. I mean, Lord and Miller basically got fired from that because they weren't turning out what Lucasfilm wanted from a Star Wars movie. And so you had
Mhm.
to have Ron Howard come in there and finish that. And so, you know, why are you going to all these unique talents if what you're looking for is essentially what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni would turn out every single time?
Right, right. They've got it dialed in for sure. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
let's
And
just let them do everything. There's the answer. There's our
well,
solution.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't complain necessarily. I
Exactly.
mean, I've liked the majority of the stuff that they've done. I mean, no one bots 1,000, so fine. But but yeah, it's just kind of I don't know. I mean, we hear time and time again various directors that would love to do a Star Wars movie, but then and writers that would, but just look at the writing history of this, Dawn or New Jedi Order movie that features Rey that's coming up. We're getting ready for our third writer on and stuff like
Mhm.
that because and we don't know why Sean Knight left that has not been revealed, not to my knowledge, but Lindenhoff basically has not been shy talking about how miserable he was trying to write a Star Wars movie that Lucasfilm would approve of. So again, I don't know. It's if this is the problem, then just bring the people in house,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
groom them from the beginning to do this stuff. But all right, enough griping. There's some other fun stuff to get out there. So bottom
Well,
line,
one
Simon
one last
Kinberg
yeah,
is
go ahead.
yeah. As I said, bottom line, Simon Kinberg is supposed to be working on a trilogy. Your guess is as good as ours, whether, when, and if we'll ever see it.
Right. And I guess just my one other thought is as much as it's great to have this other talent on board, as we said with Favreau and Filoni, keep bringing those back. Like you said, have a core. Tony Gilroy is another one. I mean,
Hmm.
just absolutely fantastic. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
we'll
agree.
see.
Okay, well, we got a couple of stories about Andor season 2 coming up, and most of this started emerging as D23 Brazil was happening. I knew that there was a D23 happening in Brazil this year. It just snuck up on me. I forgot when, and there it
Mhm.
was. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of major announcements, at least not related to Star Wars that came out of D23 Brazil, but we did get the announcement of the premiere date of Andor season 2 will be on April 22nd, 2025. So we got that to look forward to. It's interesting the that's the last bit of Star Wars content that we can definitively say is coming out before The Mandalorian and Grogu in 2026.
Mhm.
So we are going to be looking at, unless something else is in the work that we don't know about, there's going to be over a year without new Star Wars content on a screen.
Unless they sneak something in like they did with Tales of the Empire,
Yeah, that's what I'm
because
saying.
that was
There's nothing announced right now. I mean, we know
exactly.
Andor, Ahsoka season 2 is coming at some point in the future, but it's not currently in production. I
Mhm.
mean, Filoni's busy with Favreau working on The Mandalorian and Grogu, as far as we know. There hasn't been another Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire series discussed. There hasn't been a announcement of a successor series to The Bad Batch, for animation. There's
Mhm.
nothing, absolutely nothing has been announced to fill that hole. And maybe that's by design to drive up the demand for, over the course of that year. But it just is after the steady stream of content that we've had in the last 5 years since Disney Plus went online, we got the first season of The Mandalorian. It's kind of weird that we're going to have that big of a dry spell.
Yeah, yeah, maybe all this crazy movie news is to keep us occupied with that and say, "Look over here, look over here. Oh, wait, surprise, we're gonna bring this out to you on Disney Plus." Who knows? That would be nice.
I appreciate your enthusiasm and your positivity on that, but it's just it just it just is weird because
Oh, yeah.
it, and it's the flip side of what we've been talking about with the movies is like, and I feel like I'm talking about both sides of my mouth here. For so long, it was we've just been talking about like quit announcing this stuff, quit letting it leak. until you're certain it's gonna happen. And now on this side, it's like, why haven't you announced anything else coming on Disney
Crickets.
Plus?
Yeah, it's
Because
crickets.
because it seems like nothing is happening in 20, because we're gonna get to a Disney Plus trailer that came out for like all the content coming out on Disney Plus in 2025, and it talks a little bit about Skeleton Crew and then Andor, but that's it on the
Yeah,
Star Wars front.
yeah.
So anyways, but I'm excited about that. That we got a date now for Andor season 2, April 22nd. I now know when I have to have my rewatch of season 1 completed by.
Yes.
Some
I
other
almost feel like
notes
I
there.
need to do it, like, sooner than later, though. I might have to do it twice, speaking of Tony Gilroy. But,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I'm gonna wait till after Skeleton Crew, and then do that.
Oh, I'm sure I will too. I'd like to do
Yeah.
it before that, but, time is not exactly always there for all of that kind of stuff. And I do have to say before we jump into anything else that
Hmm.
it with the 5th anniversary of The Mandalorian just this last week, I can't believe it's been 5 years. I mean, I know,
I
we
know.
just celebrated our anniversary for the podcast as well, but it's I was talking about that with my teacher friend today that, gosh, we were setting our alarms for 5 a.m. and getting up and watching it before
Yeah.
school so we could come in and talk about it, kind of a thing. But at any rate, so I had to throw that in there. Sorry. Thanks for
Yeah, I
indulging.
remember getting up early and then watching it on my phone quietly while everyone else
Yes.
was sleeping, so
Yep.
I could have it watched before I went to work that day. Because it's
Exactly.
like I can't avoid social media. I have to be able to discuss this
Right. Well, it was
at the
the
time. So
water
yeah.
cooler, series
Hmm.
at the time.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So, but just some other notes that came out of D23. I guess when they had a Star Wars portion of the show planned, it was a special appearance by B2 Emo from Andor, who came out and talked to the audience in Portuguese. They did confirm that there was going to be 12 episodes in season 2, covering 4 years and 3-episode arcs, so 1 year per arc. And then they got a sneak peek at Skeleton Crew, which has not been released online. And they also got the sizzle reel that was shown at D23 here in the States for the Mandalorian and Grogu. And the other thing that we've learned recently is that Andor is going to be featured on an upcoming issue of Empire coming out later this month. So stay tuned. If there's any big reveals, we'll try and get a hold of those and cover them here on a future episode of the news.
If you can find Empire magazine, it's really hit or miss.
Oh, I just go
You can see
online
it
and see what everyone else
online,
is saying
but
about it. Yeah. Yeah, I quit trying to collect those magazines. They just take up too much space and they're hard to keep in good condition. So,
that's true. I'm
yeah.
just such a sucker for print. I love the print stuff. I love the stuff I can get my hands on.
Yeah, I hear you. It's just, again, I remember getting some of the Vanity Fair magazines that came out before the
Mhm.
Phantom Menace, and it's like, oh, I'm going to keep this in such great condition. Yeah, it's not in good condition anymore. It's in bad shape. So, yeah, they're
Aw.
collector items if you can protect them, but it's just how
Yeah.
much effort are you willing to invest in that type of a
Yeah.
thing?
I have a whole catalog of those. I'm actually staring at them right now. They're all very neatly organized into like magazine holders.
Very good. Very good. Okay, but we did get some footage from season 2 of Andor in the Disney Plus 2025 trailer that I was just mentioning a second ago.
Mhm.
And you can find this all over the place on YouTube and social media. It really is previewing like Marvel properties such as Ironheart, and it's the next season of Percy Jackson and Handmaid's Tale on Hulu. But they do feature footage from all these different things, and we get a bunch of different shots from Andor, starting with a very at the beginning. There's a shot of a speeder landing on a platform on Coruscant, and then we get to see Cassian in a room, and he says, "Let's make it worth it." At about a minute and 23 seconds, we see a bunch of stormtroopers marching on a crowd as someone screams, "Is there no one who can help us?" That scene seemed like very much to me an like Ferrex on steroids there,
Mhm.
with the Empire there on that planet, and then when the people kind of made their little march for what's her name, Andor's mom, adopted mother's funeral, and then things got out of hand. Except for now, we got stormtroopers who are really not messing around.
Yes, and I don't know how much you wanna talk about that right this second, but I kind of think I know where that one's going.
Okay. Well, where is it going?
So, okay, so the whole thing with the Gorman massacre
Hmm.
is, yeah, it came from Legends and it was basically out of a video game, but in canon, it was in 2 BBY is when it happened. And so I was watching this whole sizzle reel trailer thing, and then I ended up going down a rabbit hole on YouTube with a bunch of different videos. And I'm like, why does this sound familiar? And so as it turns out, it was mentioned in season 1 of Andor, and it was also in the it was the Catalyst of the Rebels episode, Secret Cargo, when Mon Mothma speaks out publicly against Palpatine and the Empire. And so in the way the story goes is that Gorman was basically protesting against the Empire because they were unfairly being taxed. And so what these people did was they basically sat on this landing platform. And in Legends, it was said that uh, basically Tarkin landed a ship on top of a bunch of people, and it killed some people and, maimed and injured hundreds of others. And even though it wasn't a huge massacre by imperial standards, it was the first time that people were seeing, oh, hello, the Empire
Hmm.
isn't as, beneficial and benevolent as we thought that they were. So I'm wondering if that's what this is. Because
Potential.
that makes sense, Like, is there no one who can help us? And I would love to see a live action version of that rebel scene with Mon Mothma and maybe her point of view. Because Ryder Azadi is in there, and we know he's live action. We've got a bunch of other live action rebels as well that could
Yeah,
potentially make, you know.
that would be
But
interesting though, because they'd have to like de-age them all. For,
right,
uh,
but you could still do it with Mon, you know what I'm saying? And
sure.
doing that because that's right around that time. That'd
Yeah,
be
that'd
cool.
be interesting. There's potential. Be interested to see what they do there. I mean, it'd be cool if they could work in the Rebels angle to it, but that kind of seems to go against the tone of Andor 2. But anyway, I think the Gorman Massacre is definitely a possibility. So from there, we get a number of other shots. We see Bix Colleen saying we need a pilot. And then we get a really cool shot of Cassian, apparently what looks like he's in a Rebel flight suit, but he's firing up what looks like a TIE interceptor.
It's
And
some kind of
then,
tie. Yeah.
yeah, and getting ready to blast his way out of someplace. Really cool voiceover of Luthen Rail saying to Cassian, "You're thinking like a thief." Cassian's response is, "I'm thinking like a soldier." And to which Luthen responds, "Think like a leader." We get to see Cassian firing on some stormtroopers. This one I thought was pretty cool. That looks like we get some Yavin 4 footage
Mhm.
in here as well. Look, if in the background, it looks like we get some spires of some of the temples there on Yavin 4. And then this little segment they devoted to Andor. They gave each one of the shows like their own little 20 seconds or so, even if that. And we see Bix Clean and some other standing in front of a field, like maybe it's wheat or something. But then we get towards the end of the trailer and they jump around between all the different shows. We get another shot of Cassian in the cockpit of that TIE. And then we get K2SO
Yes.
walking towards the screen.
Yes.
Um,
On what
so
seems to be Coruscant.
yeah, yeah. So that was, I mean, very minimal amount of footage for this because the whole thing was like less than 2 minutes, but they still managed to work in like stuff for 5 or 6 different shows. And what we got for Andor was very intriguing.
Oh my gosh, I'm so stinking excited for this show. I was excited for it before, but even just getting these little breadcrumbs has got me so incredibly hyped, Dennis. I can't even tell you.
Hmm.
And as much as, I am looking forward to Skeleton Crew, it is a whole new adventure, new characters, that kind of thing. This is the kind of stuff for me, anyways, is like the bread and butter of Star Wars, is
Sure.
filling in the gaps and putting together those pieces and explaining how and why things happen. And I'm just, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how excited I am for Andor.
Yeah, I don't want to overstate this because it's only like a grand total of 20 some odd seconds of Star Wars footage in this 2-minute trailer. But what's there seems like a different tone than season one of Andor. Andor's first season seemed very much like a spy thriller in this one, but what we're getting here seems to lean into the action a whole lot more, classic Star Wars action. And again, it's hard to make any type of announcement off of 20 seconds. I mean, we're not even talking about 2 minutes devoted to Andor. We're talking about 20 seconds or so. And
it's
so,
sporadic and it's
yeah,
quick. Yeah.
right. But that it just by itself, and I really liked season 1 of Andor, but this seems, again, just what we've achieved of it seems more like Rogue One. And they're talking about how this series will take us right up to the opening moments of Rogue One. So,
Right.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that makes sense why we would see Yavin, because I mean that's where Cassian ends up right before he heads to the Ring of Kafrene. So,
Hmm.
but I think your analogy of, the first one being more of a spy thriller and this one's almost like he's more like an Indiana Jones. He's doing the heists and he's, you know what I'm saying? Like he's
Yeah.
going on the adventures and he's going undercover and he's doing all these different things. And oh my gosh. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Hmm. Okay, so that's what we've got for Andor. But turning back to Skeleton Crew, it also, again, was talked about at D23. There was a little bit of footage in that 2-minute Disney Plus trailer for Skeleton Crew. Most of it we've seen in trailers, full-length trailers, so I don't really feel the need to go over that again. But the other bit of news that we got for Skeleton Crew is that we now know who the composer of the score is going to be, and that is Mick Giacchino. Not Michael Giacchino, but his son, Mick.
Right.
Michael, of course, did the score for Rogue One, and now his son is getting an opportunity to make his mark on the Star Wars universe by doing the score for Skeleton Crew. I had to admit, prior to hearing this news, I had no idea that Mick Giacchino was even doing scores for anything. But I looked it up, and he's known for his work on The Penguin, which is that series that's been on, I believe, on Max recently, and I heard nothing but good things about. A couple of Zootopia shows and Muppets Mayhem. You familiar with his work at all?
Well, just Zootopia mainly. But I mean, I just think it's so cool that, it's all in the family kind of thing. It's just like Kevin Kiner and his kids, doing all
Mm-hmm.
the composing and stuff like that. But yeah, I
Well, I
think
mean, have you
Zootopia,
done these Zootopia projects or the Zootopia the movie? Because I
the
don't think you did.
movies. Oh, this is not the movies. Okay.
No, this is his dad did the original Zootopia movie, but he's done this short Zootopia Hot Pursuit and
Okay.
Zootopia Plus. He's done the score for that. So
Gotcha.
um, I spent part of my afternoon while I was working on these notes, getting ready to podcast, checking out the score for The Penguin, and I liked it quite a bit. It actually reminded me more of Hans Zimmer's score for Sherlock Holmes than it did anything I've ever heard from Michael Giacchino.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but it wasn't bad. Again, I also haven't seen The Penguin, so I don't know where this music featured in any of those episodes, and I wasn't really paying attention to titles or anything. So, you know, and I hate to say it, but my first thought was nepotism hire because how connected his dad is. But no, I mean it was decent work when I heard it. So I mean it was not didn't seem like second rate to me.
Well, that's cool then. I mean, and in this world, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Sure. But yeah, there's a good article on StarWars.com if you want to go check it out. That's got more thoughts about that and his opportunity to do this. Okay,
Cool.
last little bit of news that we've got is that we were just talking about music by John Williams last week, and it has already won an award, and that would be from the Critics' Choice. And so the Laurent Bozereau documentary has won the Critics' Choice Documentary Award for Best Documentary. Also, the Redundancy Award from the Department of Redundancy, I guess, with that title. But I mean, good for that.
Oh yeah,
You and I were glowing about that
definitely.
documentary last week, and it deserves all the accolades it can get.
Oh, 100%. So well deserved indeed. So congratulations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's got me excited to see what else it'll manage to win. Going to be up for an Oscar, or we know they had it in theaters for a little while, so it's certainly
Mhm.
available for that.
Well,
Okay, well then, that'll do it for this week's edition of Star Wars News here on Podcast Stardust. Thanks for indulging me on griping a little bit about the movie situation. I appreciate that, and I'm trying to be a bit more positive next week. But anyways, we hope you've enjoyed the discussion one way or the other. And if you did, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. And while you're doing that, rate, all the podcast things, review. We appreciate those. And then you can go over to retrozap.com and find all of our previous episodes, as well as other podcasts such as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Case Files, Animaniacast, Brews and Blasters, Dork Lair, Doomcast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, which has got a good episode on Venom this week, and Warp Trails. Jay, you want to remind everybody of where else we can be found online?
Absolutely. Always my pleasure. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X conveniently at Podcast Stardust. And you can also find us over on our 2 YouTube outlets, which is the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So head over to both of those, subscribe, and share those out. And you can also find us on basically every other podcatcher and listening service of your choice. So we are also on Spotify and Audible, which also do support reviews. So we'd love to see it. And we'll definitely read those on the show. And we also have a Pinterest page with lots and lots of boards dedicated to all kinds of fun Star Wars ideas. And then if you'd like to interact with us in real time, we do have a Discord room on the RetroZap Discord server. So if you want to do that, hit up the link in our show notes. And while you're there, you can check out all the other Discord rooms for all of the other RetroZap shows that Dennis was just running down. And if you'd like to support the show, you can always go to our TeePublic store page. And once again, the link to that is in our show notes. And we do have 7 different show logo designs available on tons of different types of apparel and home goods. And so if you do happen to snag something, be sure to take a picture and tag us on one of our social media outlets. And we would love to share that out. So once again, the link to our TeePublic store is in our show notes.
All right. You want to remind everybody what you got going on in cosplay?
Sure. So I actually just did a Makerspace how-to festival at a local library near me, and that was a lot of fun. I got to interact with especially some youngsters that came out of their shell and asked about some cosplay things. I had a little spinny wheel that if they spun the wheel, they could win a prize from one of my merch bundles. And so that was a lot of fun. And then I do have GalaxyCon Columbus coming up the first weekend in December. So between now and then, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay, as Ahsoka, 2 different versions of Hera, the Fourth Sister, and my original concept Mandalorian.
Okay. Upcoming on the show on Monday, we'll be discussing another episode of the Clone Wars from season 1. That would be episode 15, Trespass. And then on Wednesday, Jay is going to give us all the rundown and the latest from the world of Star Wars fashion and lifestyle products in World Between Worlds. So with that, thanks for listening to episode 808 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.